Hello, Somerville. My name is Ed Halloran, and welcome to the Somerville Labor Show. We are very pleased to have a very special guest here today. And our episode is actually about the Green New Deal. Many of you have heard about it. It's all over the place. It's a nationwide concern about climate change. And we want to have a show about this because it does relate to what is going on right now in our society, what's going on in the world. It's incredibly important. So my guest that I have here today is from the Better Future Project located in Cambridge. And I'm going to read you just a brief statement about who they are and their mission statement. Works to build a powerful grassroots movement to address the climate crisis and advance a rapid and responsible transition beyond coal, oil, and gas toward a renewable energy future for all. We educate the public about climate change, empower new leaders, and help citizens to make their voices heard. And my guest graduated from UCLA with a BS in microbiology, immunology, and molecular genetics. Through originally interested in global health, she quickly fell in love with organizing through co-founding the Student Food Collective and Initiative to form the student-run and owned cooperative grocery, and starting the fossil fuel-free UCLA divestment campaign. She hails from Modesto, California, in northern Central Valley, and she considers her hometown a critical frontline community when viewing the narrative of the climate change on the West Coast. So we have Alyssa Lee. Welcome to the Somerville Labor Show.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. All the way, just to let you guys know this, all the way from California, just to be on this show today. Am I right?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm wrong. It's not true. However, I do appreciate it. Alyssa, I read a little bit of your bio, and you're the director of the campus programs of the Better Future Project. Can you tell me exactly what you guys do over there?
Yes, so Better Future Project has a few different programs. One of them is Divest Ed, where we provide coaching, training, mentorship, and connect students all across the country who are running fossil fuel divestment campaigns, trying to get their schools to address their responsibilities to think about where their investments are, if they're good for both their future and for their communities.
So are you asking people politely, in a way, to consider divesting from fossil fuel?
Sometimes the students go with a polite approach, but I can tell you that mostly it never works. Sometimes they choose to keep with it, but mostly we find that the polite approach, while it might feel the most comfortable, it's never the one that works. And the reason being that we're asking universities to do something that they ultimately are scared to do. Many times they just don't want to do it. They don't want to be put their names out there. They don't want to be political, and they don't want headlines about something controversial.
You're asking them to make a bold move.
Asking them to make a bold move. And increasingly, it's less and less of a bold move. They're in very good company when it comes to divestment.
Can you give me a couple people on that list that you think are major players of divestment right now?
Yeah, the most recent being Middlebury College, which is a pretty big school, and in terms of its ranking, in terms of its influence, they decided to divest in January of this year after 6 years of rejection, basically. And so it's kind of a remarkable thing to see when back in 2012, they were very much against it. A couple of the schools that have made some progress on divestment include Stanford University, divested from coal. That happened in 2014, and then we've also got the UMass system, which decided to divest from coal, oil, and gas holdings in May 20.
So let me ask you this: when we talk about divestment, what are we asking of the leadership of the schools? What are we asking them to do? Because our viewers, we're talking about divestment. They may not know what that is. We don't have to get too heavy into that.
Sure.
What does it mean?
Yep, the universities have an endowment. That endowment is used as a sort of a cushion for the schools, so they invest it in many different industries, many different companies, and many different funds, so that they can make a return, have some stability. We're asking them to divest, meaning take their investments out of companies who have significant holdings in fossil fuel reserves. So essentially the companies that are doing the exploration and trying to do the extraction of coal, oil, and gas.
So from the other side of that coin,
For sure.
looking at it from playing devil's advocate, one would say, well, why are these people, I mean, this is my money, we're concerned, how do we replace that? Like, people are concerned about their retirement funds and so on and so forth. They're very concerned about that. So you probably get a lot of questions about that, I'm sure. And people are always talking about that. We need to replace that with something else. What is the suggestion that your group has to come up with that could replace the fossil fuel?
Absolutely.
Investing.
Yeah. Some schools, their endowment has a direct relationship to the pension funds of the staff. Some schools that don't, but either way, that concern does generally end up coming up because schools have a strong interest in making sure that there's enough money to support new programs, support scholarships. First of all, climate risk is a real thing in terms of investment risk. At this point, it's been shown, there's a lot of evidence over and over that investing in fossil fuels, if it isn't hurting your investments, it's at least, it doesn't make much of a difference.
That's the hurdle. That's the big hurdle right there. To get over that, I think, because I know a little bit about it. We've actually had discussions on that before about divesting. I think personally, from my personal perspective, I think it's inevitable. It will happen. It's just a slower process in some areas. From what I'm learning, what I'm understanding. Let me ask you a question about environmental justice. I hear this all the time. We hear so much about it in the news, and what exactly does it mean, and what should it mean to the public, environmental justice? What defines that?
Right.
What's its definition?
Yeah. Environmental justice came about in the 20th century. It came from organizations and communities who were finding that when they were fighting the same things in their communities that were causing pollution, like toxic waste landfills or sewage treatment plants, that oftentimes they were noticing that because they were predominantly Black or a predominantly Latinx or not English-speaking community, they weren't getting as much attention on these polluting problems compared to maybe other groups. And so
you're saying in the poor areas,
areas that don't have that same political influence or voice. So that's a little bit of context, but to me, environmental justice just means understanding that when it comes to our environment, where we live, where we eat, where we breathe, where we play, where we work, all the things that make up the environment, they're not equal. They're not equal because of maybe our income or our race or just
there's
our
a lot of equality
voice.
issues going on out there right now in the world. So I think this is a big one right here for sure. No doubt about it. So the website, we're going to put that up. It is the betterfutureproject.org. And you have a slogan. I call it a slogan.
Sure.
Right? It's empower, connect, activate. What exactly does that mean?
I think it starts with empower because the first thing is showing that you don't have to be in government, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to have a specific title to be someone who wants your voice to be heard, to be someone who has a thought and wants to get involved. So the first thing being empower, I think, is about first showing somebody that just because of you being you and you having this concern or need, you get to do something about that.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense to me. So let's do this. We're here to talk about the Green New Deal. That's what we're here, okay? And it's very controversial. I believe it's controversial in some areas, and in some areas, maybe not. It's going to have to educate. We're going to have to educate a lot of people on this one, I can tell you. So for those of you who don't know what the New Deal was, some of us do, of the older generation, under FDR. I'm going to give you a brief description of what the New Deal was. It was a series of programs, public work projects, financial reforms, regulations enacted by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the United States between 1933 and 1936. It responded to needs for relief, reform, and recovery from the Great Depression. So now what we have is we have the new Green Deal. Ed Markey, Senator Ed Markey, said that we are now in an era of the new Green Deal. Ed Markey, Massachusetts Senator and New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, co-sponsors of the Green New Deal. As of February 7th, 2019, they introduced a 16-page resolution calling on Congress to tackle climate change by eliminating fossil fuels, have gained nearly 24 sponsors since freshman star Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez introduced it on February 7, 2019. So here's what we need. We need you to help our viewers understand a little bit about it and if you think this can actually get off the ground and be enacted. What do you think?
So I think the Green New Deal, the reason that you're talking about it on your show and why we get...
I'm talking about for jobs.
Yes.
I'm talking about some green jobs, man. That's what we're looking for.
We have two huge crises. We have the fact that we're looking at an existential crisis of our entire world changing and on the order of millions of people losing their homes and also losing their lives. And we have the crisis of inequity. We have enormous inequities all over the place. And one of the reasons why climate change doesn't have the kind of support in the public or just, personally day to day, something that we think about is because we've got all these other issues in our lives to worry about. Just, making rent, finding a job that's going to pay us well, thinking about how we're going to pay for childcare, how we're going to pay off our student debt. Right. And so there's all these
crisis.
All the very legitimate crises that take up probably a lot more of our attention than thinking about what is the world going to be like 200 years from now and how are we going to stop something that we can't even imagine. And so we've got these two crises that desperately need action, and not just small incremental action, not just action in one city or this city or over a long period of time. We need bold, transformative action.
And you believe that this bill that's introduced is bold.
I believe it's.
We're going to get into it. I'm going to read a few things on that bill. And I know you're prepared because I can see all that, and I appreciate that. So there's always fear of the unknown, and in this case, how do you convince people that this is something that is staring you down, and it could be catastrophic?
Can you say that again?
Well, there's. People get very concerned, and they're always afraid of the unknown. When we talk about divesting, we talk about, is it real? Is climate change real? And it's hard to convince people that it's actually real, but I think as we talked earlier before we started the show, we're talking about there's even health risks that are happening right now. Yeah. And doctors are actually educating, a lot of their patients on climate change. So I guess it's more of a statement than anything else. So on this labor show, here's what we normally do. We discuss jobs, good paying jobs, and if we can get union jobs out of them, we're always happy to have that as well. So we believe that unions obviously are the righteous group. We're a watchdog. We preserve workers' fair rights and representation. So in a very recent article that our co-producer, who is sitting in on the show today, Greg Hill, found, there was some eye-opening information that I would like to share with our viewers. And you can tell me whether you object or whether you agree to any of this, all right? And we're going to cover it. So I have to give Jeremy Breacher the credit on this one because this is his article. I loved what I saw on this article. It's called Making the Green New Deal Work for Workers. And I'm going to read you a little something from it and tell me your thoughts on it. One of the excerpts from it is, if fossil fuel use is eliminated, then workers who extract, process, transport, and use fossil fuels are likely to lose their jobs. If a zero-carbon airplane cannot be built, workers in aviation, not to mention the military, will also face losses. If eliminating the use of fossil fuels were to lead to mass economic destruction, then all workers would suffer. How do you feel about that?
I'm so down with this article. I think that the environmental movement has to do a lot of work to show how we're going to make sure that everything we're calling for isn't going to hurt people who've made their living just trying to get food on the table. And so we talk a lot about what does it mean for workers in the fossil fuel industry. So I have a couple of things that I think need to be addressed in the Green New Deal, need to be front and center, and are already being addressed. A big part of the Green New Deal is about this idea of guaranteeing jobs and also guaranteeing good
We're going to get to that too.
jobs.
Yeah, because that's a concern. I think that prevents people from really embracing this. They're worried about the transition.
Right.
As we talked about the divestment, people are wondering, well, what's going to replace my fossil fuel stock?
Exactly.
How are we going to do that?
Right.
It's conceptually things are great. They always are. When something sounds really good, but how do we get there? How do we do it?
Exactly.
That's the most important thing. The next little paragraph that I have here is, currently organized labor is divided on the Green New Deal. A March letter by 10 unions on the AFL-CIO's Energy Committee said that while energy efficiency initiatives and strong labor standards were needed, the Green Deal resolution is far too short on specific solutions and could cause immediate harm to millions of our members and their families. However, on the other hand, central labor councils in California and Los Angeles County have endorsed the Green New Deal, such as SEIU.
Yeah.
Is that, you want to comment on
Yes,
that?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go right ahead.
I think this is exactly what I hoped would happen with this resolution. This resolution is about showing that there is a duty of the government. There is a duty to respond to climate change. There's a duty to put an enormous amount of resources into making sure this crisis is addressed. But what the Green New Deal is specifically focusing on is how do we actually transform our society and our economy in a way that makes sure that what comes out of addressing the climate crisis isn't the same inequity and the same top versus down. So I think that what's happening right now with getting this critique or getting this feedback, the resolution is, a non-binding resolution. It's not going to have any teeth on its own. But through this process, since it's been introduced, we've seen how people are building power around it, having conversations with people around it. And all of these conversations, I can tell you, are we see these articles, we see these statements, we see these tweets, and it's all coming into thinking, okay, so what does it mean now to actually think about transforming our economy to run on a new type of energy that is maybe new for a lot of different systems, and recognizing that we can do that in a way that's actually going to make good jobs, that's going to make people healthier overall.
So let's get into that then.
Right.
So this is an opportunity to tackle economic inequality. We talked about that earlier. And reindustrialize America with a green economy through jobs that, with the right training, can provide career ladders for many low-cost, low-wage workers who struggle to afford the high cost of living. An analysis by the Solutions Project found that a transition to 100% renewables would create 4 million long-term jobs and millions more short-term jobs, more in a total that would be lost. Already clean energy outnumber fossil fuel jobs by 3 to 1, but to compensate workers who lose jobs in fossil fuel, related industries, and aid fossil fuel dependent communities, new labor policies will be needed.
Right.
So what they're telling us here is that there's going to be 4 million jobs that are come out of this here, and they're going to be long lasting. So that's something that's incredibly important as well. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all.
I do.
But are you down with it? But if you want to comment, you can.
One of the things that gets me angrier than anything is when Peabody Coal declared bankruptcy. There are a lot of people who are, excited about that. We're showing that we're making this transition and that coal is no longer, really economically makes sense. But when Peabody Coal declared bankruptcy, the people who shorted the bankruptcy were the workers. Peabody's shareholders made out just fine, made out really well. And so, not only is the fossil fuel industry ruining our planet, ruining the chance for future generations to survive, and polluting people's daily lives, they're also not preparing their workers for what's to come. The fact that they are becoming more and more obsolete, they have to become, and they're not actually.
We need more visionaries out there, people who are willing to go along with this, if that's what it takes. I'm just a host of the show.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not a full-blown advocate here, but
Absolutely.
I'm very interested in the whole job. So another statement we have is that these jobs require a high skill level. Workers with minimal experience could, if you don't have a lot of experience, you could weatherize homes, install energy efficiency improvements, and serve as apprentices on new construction. They could conduct waste removal, recycling, plant trees, store carbon. Workers with some experience, education, or certifications could restore wetlands, provide energy auditing, work on renewable energy installations, and electrify buildings. There's so much here. It's amazing what's going on. And if this can happen, then I can tell you right now, it'll really be it'll be amazing because I think there's a great opportunity here to do many things as well. One of the things that's come up, and they talk about this all the time, is that organized labor, it's been under siege for so long that any change can be perceived as a threat rather than an opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's always a concern when it comes to labor, because
Definitely.
transitioning back and forth is always seen to be a problem. So hopefully at some point in time, labor, I think labor is getting involved in it, can do something and jump on. Has labor, have you guys done a lot with labor as far as getting support from them?
Yeah,
on
yeah.
some of the, is there any specific groups? I mean, I named the SEIU. They're a huge group.
Yeah, they've been a
Okay.
huge supporter. We have, you've been hearing about the Green New Deal at the federal level, but here in Massachusetts, 350 Mass, which is one program within Better Future Project, is one of the many groups working with a broader coalition called the Green Justice Coalition to advance Massachusetts' statewide Green New Deal. What does it mean for us to do something like this in our state? And so we've been very intentionally working with labor leaders, including SEIU, who also is represented in our board, and they have been an enormous ally, and part of their allyship has been in telling us, here's what you need to do to make sure that this makes
look,
sense.
I know a little bit about it only because I'm the president of my union. I have been for the past 12 years, so we're all about good jobs, good paying jobs, long-lasting positions, that people can actually build on a career ladder. That's really what's really important to us. So let me just give you another statement that I have here. That was a great article by Jeremy Breacher. So if nobody knows who he is, look him up if you can. Among the most prominent, the deal calls meeting 100% of the power demand in the United States through clean, renewable, and zero-emission energy sources. The ultimate goal is to stop using fossil fuels entirely, Ocasio-Cortez office told NPR, as well as to transition away from nuclear energy. That's huge right there, right? So I'm going to give you some of these ambitious, I call them ambitious proposals.
Yeah.
All right? And that's exactly what we have here, because we're getting, it goes by so quickly when we have this discussion. Here's what they're talking about. Here's just a few of them. Upgrading all existing buildings in the country for energy efficiency, working with farmers to eliminate pollution and greenhouse gas emissions as much as technologically feasible, while supporting family farms and promoting universal access to healthy food, organic healthy food. Overhauling transportation systems to reduce emissions, including expanding electric car manufacturing. I hope that'll happen soon because I'd like an electric car. That'd be great. Charging stations everywhere. Expanding high-speed rail, a scale where air travel stops becoming necessary. A guaranteed job with family-sustaining wage, adequate family and medical leave, paid vacations, retirement security for every American, high-quality health care for all Americans. This is it, man. I mean, this is like, right? My troubles are over. I just want to let everybody know. All right? This is it. If this could be done, it would be amazing. For me, I don't want to sound like I don't. It's something that is going to take a lot of work and a lot of energy to put into this.
Absolutely.
Do you believe? It's an easy question. Are they doable? Do you think that they can attain all of these goals?
The reason I pause because I'm sort of a cynical person, but I think they are. When I've seen. When we have something out there that is actually calling on how are we calling for a bill that is actually making life better, not just stopping something bad, but actually making life better for everyone, especially for people who've been left behind. I think that we needed to see what is possible, and it doesn't feel possible because we've never seen anything like this. I've had very little hope, very little examples of how we've actually been able to meet making people's lives better and doing something that's big to address some of the hugest problems we have in this country. So when I see how much conversation this has stirred among people who I've never heard ever once talk about climate change, maybe they've talked about some other, small things here and there.
Your generation's going to have to clean this up. You're going to have to take care of this for us now.
I've heard that a lot. We need a lot of help.
We appreciate it. So getting to the close to the very end, okay, I want to mention one thing. We don't even know if it's a bill, but it's non-binding, right?
The Green New Deal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we get that straight. I want to make sure we get that straight.
It's a non-binding resolution.
So here's what I did find also. New York, well, I didn't find it. Again, Greg, thank you, found this article. New York City passed the Green New Deal requiring green roofs on buildings, which I think is amazing. New York City may not have a lot of greenery, but the metropolis slowly getting greener. Just in time for Earth Day, the New York City Council passed a group of bills known as One New York City 2050 and New York City's Green Deal. The $14 billion act is full of bills working towards singular goal, a 40% reduction of New York City's greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2050. One of the most interesting bills is one being referred to as the Green Roofs Act, as explained by Dwell. The Green Roofs Act will require new buildings in New York City, whether they are residential or commercial, to outfit their roofs and plants solar panels and mini wind turbines. The legislation would also apply to buildings undergoing significant renovations. Additionally, New York City will eventually require 50,000 buildings that are 25,000 square feet large or larger to lower their emissions on energy use. So this is an amazing accomplishment, what they've done in New York City. Yes. And we've got 1 minute and a closing statement, and it's all yours. And you can look in the camera, you can say anything you want, you can tell us, how do you feel? Where are we going with this thing? And just give us a brief ending to the show.
Yes, the first is that we need to hear your voices. Labor needs to speak for labor. Workers need to speak for themselves, and it's our job as a community of people who have committed themselves to trying to make this societal transformation happen, to listen and to make sure that we incorporate what does it mean to have good paying jobs, and make sure that we're paying for training, we're paying for not just your training, but to pay you while you're getting the training, to make sure that if people are, not at an age where they feel like they're going to train to a new career, just pay for you to thank you for your service and pay for your pension and retirement. These are all things that we've thought of because we've gotten the feedback, because we've gotten the critique, and we just need labor to speak for themselves and to speak often, to talk about this, to say what you like, say what you're worried about. And the last thing I'll say is I'll just say that this is very important to me because the place I was born is probably not going to exist in my children's lifetime. I was born in the Northern Mariana Islands. It's probably not going to exist in the next 70 to 100 years. It's going to be completely underwater, and the people who live there will have no place that they could ever called home.
So I actually appreciate that. I really can appreciate that. And you know what? It is real. Climate change is real. We all know that, and we can't really avoid it any longer as well. One thing that we do say, and I encourage you guys to do the same thing, is when we fight, what happens?
We win!
You got it, man. You got it. So over and out, and unity is strength. I want to thank you very much, Alyssa, for being on the show. You did a great job. I have a shirt for you, a T-shirt, okay? But it's way too big, but we will give you one of them. All right? I appreciate it. Unity is strength, and peace.